Yeah, sure.
Okay. We are a go. We're still waiting for some people to join the monthly, but I figured with some newer members here, feel free to say hello and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. My name's Caroline. I met Natalie through Brian, who has just joined as well. And I am a small kind of strategy consultant for female-owned, queer-owned, minority-owned businesses. And so got connected with Natalie because of that and because of the mission of She's Independent being so aligned with the mission of what I'm trying to do. And then I also am really interested in learning more on a personal level about investing in finance, and which why I'm an observer member as well. So dual paths, one of potentially helping support She's Independent from a branding and marketing standpoint, but then also selfishly to learn more about investing. And I've loved all of the content that Natalie's been putting out, and I'm excited to be here and just observe.
Love it. Thanks so much. Brian, if you want to say hello. Oh, I see you commented something, so that works. Great to have you both. If anybody else who has not said hello, who's newer, wants to chime in, you're welcome to. It looks like we actually have Maureen on, who is not even a member yet. Sometimes people get VIP invites, let's just say. Maureen's really interesting, comes from a mindset background. No need, but you're welcome to come on video and say hi if you'd like.
Hello, hi.
Hello. Great to see you. So I think we have just about 18 minutes until the formal event kind of kicks off today. We did a little bit something different with this month's monthly. So maybe I'll dive right in, and we're really using this kind of upfront time to talk a little bit through member updates, a few things that we wanted to let you know for the month of December before we move into the event. And we'll also preface and share a little bit about what that looks like. So to kick us off today, let's first just do a little bit of a year in review. We launched, January of 2022, and we are now, and I said 70 members, but we are just under, we are approaching 70 members. So first, thanks for being a part of this, really exciting to see. In aggregate, we've deployed 550,000 of capital this year. Really exciting. In reviewing the numbers, about 60% of that capital and also the companies that pitched us were either women-owned or women in, primary leadership roles, even if it was, say a co-founder was a woman. The trend, though, is that because of who we are, because of the mission, because of our makeup, we're actually seeing now 80+% of the companies that are being referred, that are coming to us, are these kind of women-owned companies. And if you say, wow, only 60% of what you did went towards women, keep in mind that gap, less than 3%. And actually the updated stat is 2% of the financing has gone to women-owned. So what we're doing is really tremendous. We've loved seeing and hearing from, new investors. The majority of our, members have not before written checks into private companies. And so how did it feel when they did? How did it feel when you did? We're hearing just tremendous things. And we're also hearing, such great feedback from those observers who say that they're learning a lot, even if they're not yet writing checks. And so we're really thrilled to be showing up in this space. Thank you again. If you want to make referrals, we love that. I'd love to get us to more of the investing members so that we can continue to deploy capital at I'd say a bigger rate, if not a faster rate, because we're probably going too fast in ways, and doing a few deals a quarter, feels good. Okay, so a few other things I wanted to touch on. The market environment. Markets are scary, right? We're all hearing about the Fed. We're hearing about rate hikes. We're hearing about what's going to happen with the economy. And something that I wanted to mention is the way that we invest and the way that we kind of position ourselves and the way that we're deploying capital. We're not expecting a payday next month, next year. These deals can take years. And I always say this, even though I've had tremendous track record with these deals, you shouldn't invest expecting a 5x or a 10x or a 20x. Part of the reason we're here and we're showing up, we're investing, is to impact money flows, to learn, to have access, maybe to get to the board, right? There's a lot of reasons. And I never want somebody saying, oh, I happen to have $10,000 and that's all I have. Where do I put this into a risky asset to make more money? That's not the right way to think about it. And so just reminding you, right, that mission and what we show up for. if we're getting liquidity, meaning if we're getting exits on the investments, the average, to remind you, is 8+ years for a private company to exit. Even though it's a little bit better for women owned, we see it's about 7.5 years, but that's a long time horizon. Market cycles are a thing, they happen. I'm glad I never invested, in crypto, or maybe I did a little bit here and there. There's scary things out there that happen, but these are longer time horizons. So just remember, right? It's not so much that we're like, oh, we only invest in this one thing and we're expecting a payday in 2 years. We're investing in ways that are investing also in ourselves. And it's a longer horizon. So blips happen, markets are scary, never over allocate, right? You should have a wealth manager or financial advisor, somebody that you talk to around, diversification, having liquidity and all those things. But I just wanted to mention that I'm not concerned because I know that the types of businesses that I'm putting money into, that we're putting money into, they're both aligned with the mission, the interests. We're investing in good people and we are de-risking in ways. There's a lot of businesses that we've said no to, and I'm very happy we said no to them. Because when liquidity is easy, when markets are up, people are investing in dumb things. It's our job to say, how do we find things and how do we invest where there's a good risk return? But I guarantee you, right, when the markets go down, when money's harder to get, companies will shut their doors. And that's just a part of the cycle. That's why we want to find the good ones. Okay, so a few mentions for upcoming events. First, I'll make a quick mention to the event that's kicking off in 13 minutes, which is this conversation series. And if you're getting our email newsletter, we talked a little bit about it, but I realized that we never really talked about it too much as a group because it's something very new to us. But this conversation series is something we're really excited to launch, where this kickoff event today, we coincided it with our monthly, but in the future, it'll be a separate thing. But it's really just to get to know some of these voices, founders, investors, playing in the startup ecosystem, talking through power dynamics, talking through, do you have advice for our group, knowing what we're all about? What have you learned on your investor journey or on your fundraising journey? And the kickoff event's exciting, of course, because we invested in Rebecca, and I'll share a little bit more of a preview as we're, launching into that talk. But just wanted to let you know that's why we're doing an abbreviated monthly meeting today, is for that conversation series. And that conversation series will sometimes be just for our members and sometimes be wider. And we may even tap some of you as members to lead some of those conversations. Some of you are real estate experts. Some of you are experts in areas that, would be really beneficial for our members to learn from. So quick mention about that. Our other event that's upcoming is next week. We have a climbing and co-working event in Denver. And I know that not all of you are in Denver, but keep in mind, we are going to keep stepping up and thinking about how can we have events in other markets. And so the co-working and climbing event, you do not need to be a climber. You are truly allowed to, and we even have, a few individuals that got out of surgery. They're just going to, be able to watch and hang out for the co-working. You don't have to pay for the climbing day pass, but you can always message me if you have questions. We can give you a little bit of climbing instruction if it's new, but those will be fun events to kick off. And then separately, we are going to try a hybrid format for some of the upcoming pitches. So Rachel, I think you were going to mention something about the upcoming pitch event date. Feel free to give a call to action around more sourcing efforts, however you want to do so.
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. So I'm based in New Jersey, and there's a small but growing group of us in the tri-state area of New York. And so we're going to try to meet up on January 26th, which is when our next pitch event is. We'll probably do like an early happy hour or a late lunch sort of thing in Jersey City. So more to come on that. I have your contact information and I'll be reaching out to invite you. And then also both Natalie mentioned earlier, referring friends to the group, that'd be fantastic, but also referring companies to us. We've had some really cool companies introduced to us from our members. And those are always kind of like a higher quality companies, and they're not ones that are just sending us emails in from nowhere. So it's nice to have that reference point and know that it's vetted and approved by you. So thank you. And if you have any questions about how that process works, how to send a company our way, if you think a company is possible or not, feel free to reach out to Natalie or I, and we can talk it through with you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel. So we will start, rolling out and trying to do a little bit more of hybrid formats for pitch events and, for other events as well. For those of you that are local in Colorado and want to come to that climbing and co-working event, we even have some snacks provided by one of the companies that was pitching us. They're navigating a private placement. They're in plant food, and it's really interesting. So if you come to that event next week, there's no cost. We're not charging, you to join this. You're welcome to, pay the gym if you want to be on the climbing portion of the event, but you'll get some free snacks and you'll be able to say, wow, we get these freebies from companies we're looking at, and it's just a fun way to participate. We have a note in the chat. Can observers join? Says, yes, says Marie. Great question. So pitch events, unfortunately, have restrictions where we're legally not allowed to have the observers join for live pitches. It's the only stipulation, the only thing that our legal team said cannot happen. But what I think may make a lot of sense is in that hybrid format, maybe there's the pitch event, and then maybe there's a debrief after the pitch, or drinks, or coffee, or something else where observers can be a part of it. Again, we record pitches, and so observers get it after the fact. Unfortunately, observers just cannot be in a live pitch due to the regulations. So great question. And there you go, Rachel. You have another New York, New Jersey individual that wants to join. So wonderful. So with that, I know we have a few minutes still before the hour. The final thing I wanted to mention in this brief member chat was we are still rolling out this new member experience. And I had a great question come up from somebody yesterday and said, can you remind us about taxes, right? It's year end. And we talked a little bit about taxes, or I sent a blurb and summary, via the email that I sent out in summary to the last meeting. But one of the things that we're going to roll out even sooner is the updated FAQ. And so as a reminder, Notion is this space, or this, let's call it, series of web pages that are open to you, where we're rolling out a lot more information, a lot more, kind of engaging material for you to say, oh, how do I participate in this? Or how do I get that answered? And so the FAQ page, I've already dropped it by email, and I'm going to drop it in the chat as well as another reminder right now. And it's somewhere where if you are newer, I suggest you look over the whole thing, but you can also do keyword searches. You could say, keyword find tax, and we have a bunch of information on that FAQ. So more coming around, the Notion pages and how to better interact and engage and, get up to speed. But that's just one thing I wanted to mention on today's call. Ariane, who's a part of this, she's our ops lead, basically our COO, and doing tremendous things. We're in the final stages of kind of testing, rollout of some things, but we wanted to make that accessible. So let me pause. I know we've said a lot. Any questions, any comments? I know we're getting towards, the year end here. We're approaching a year of being in session with you all. We'd love feedback. Feel free to come off mute and say hello. Not all at once.
I had a question, Natalie.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, everybody. When we refer leads or companies to She's Independent, how do we know which ones make it to the next vetting round? And then do they also get notified that, hey, you have not made it to the
No, it's a great question. And let me also give a huge shout out to Alex, who's speaking right now, because she has made so many quality intros. So thank you.
I keep saying this while asking.
So it actually works really well with what I was just talking about, which is in rolling out a better member, engagement experience in Notion. So the link I just sent you all with the FAQ, there's going to be pages and ways for you to navigate around to see what is the deal cycle? What do we expect? What happens? What's the process? So a lot of this is written out and structured in a way, but I'll give the recap right now. And it's something that as you're a part of She's Independent, you'll learn, will evolve, it may change. But basically we have a quarterly cycle where we're investing all the time. We're running these sourcing and screening activities. And so basically we have a pipeline of, let's call it, deals that we've not yet screened, deals that we have screened, deals that maybe we passed on, deals that we're thinking about investing in. And a lot of this is going to be in that deal sourcing document, which we link to from Notion and then also from Slack. So right now, everybody has an invite to Slack. You should be in Slack. And basically, there's links to different things, and we're going to make it a little bit more approachable. But the deal sourcing doc has a list of, these are the different companies that we're talking to. How do they get on that list? When they email us, the investments@shesindependent.com email, then they enter our process. We put them on that, deal sourcing doc. We start monitoring and managing, and we're still getting better at it. I'd say we could probably be tighter on the, we might pass on this, or, we need to circle back on that. But it does have a number of eyeballs on it. If anyone else wants to be a part of sourcing and screening, let Rachel know. She's leading that, part of the business. But basically they're going to know, because we're going to communicate to them, this is the cadence of how we invest. This is the process. And so when we're thinking about this upcoming pitch day later in January, what's happening into that is we're formalizing, what have we screened? What companies do we want to potentially look at investing in? And we're going to basically give all of our investing members a voting mechanism to say, the screening, the sourcing has led us to these 10, 12, 15 companies, whatever the high quality kind of end game group we come up with. And then you all can vote. And then based on that vote, we will say, okay, let's invite these 2, 3, 4, in some cases, 5 companies to that pitch day. But it's very much on us. We should be communicating to let them know if it's not a fit. We should be letting them know if they're a part of the process and they don't get voted in, if we pass on the investment. And part of it is, getting more leaders or individuals and members to step up. And by rewarding you all by giving you a portion of carried interest. If you're curious what carried interest is, look at the FAQ. It's a way where we can basically scale and operate and see, hundreds of deals and, figure out, okay, these are the 2 we want to invest in. Great question.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Any more questions before we shortly move into the event? And it's very fun. Rebecca actually joined us early, so she's a part of our call already before we move into that fireside. Hello, Rebecca.
Hi, guys. It's so nice to see you all, and so nice to meet those of you that I've not yet met. And I am so serious, Natalie, about joining this group. Hi, Rachel.
This is fun. Well, yeah, I know we'll give a few minutes for people we'll give it a few minutes for people to trickle in, and then we'll do a little bit more of a formal introduction. But by a show of hands, I know we only have some, I guess, that are on the video, but feel free to raise your hand if you invested in Kidcaboo. You can also do it if you're not, I guess, on video. You can probably, do a little emoji, but I think it's just a few of us on video, but you have a lot of fans. You have a lot of fans, even if they're not on video right now.
Thank you.
Great. So we're just approaching the hour, and we're going to have now some non-members start joining. We promoted this and shared it on Eventbrite, on LinkedIn. One shout out or thing I want to mention that I loved, Wheezy suggested, she's on our comms team, she can't make it today, was you want to share a little bit about your journey of investing around whether you're writing checks, whether you're learning from She's Independent, post, tag us. We'd love to reshare it. I think the member stories and what we're hearing from you all sharing your experiences is really impactful. I've loved getting the emails, and it's, I learned this, I wrote my first check and I can't believe it, I was scared, now I'm writing my 3rd check. I mean, it's really exciting. And so I don't want just me to get those. I want everyone to see those. And I want, others to see that this is accessible. You can be on that learning journey. You can be on that investing journey. And if I just say that, right, it only says so much, but I think when you start getting the individuals that are really doing the thing for the first time, it's really impactful. So tag us, post, share, celebrate, and we'd love to share that story. I guess the other thing, I'll give Brian a quick shout out, Brian Rogers, who's on here. He is content, he does videography, really interesting, background, really engaging, fun to have him pull, who you are authentically out of the conversation. which he's really good at. And so we may end up having him tap some people and do, short videos of, how did this feel? What did you learn? So that's going to be something exciting, hopefully in the near term horizon. All right, so we'll give it a few more minutes for people to join us. This is the first of our conversation series. So again, an exciting new journey for us. Thank you, Rebecca, for being one of the first where we are, launching this together. And I'm really excited to hear more of your story. I know that in investing in you and in our diligence process, we started to learn about you, but learning a little bit more about the things that don't happen in the investor conversation, learning a little bit more about you as a founder, a single mom, how you got here, things that you learned. We're really excited to hear that story. And so I do have some questions prepared, but if you are joining us and if you have questions for Rebecca, we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. So you're always welcome to raise your hand, drop something in the chat. You could even come off of mute and speak up if you have a question, something didn't make sense. I think, driving engagement, making sure this is valuable to everyone here is a huge part of these conversations. So with that, I think we'll get it started in just a minute. Maybe before I kick off with some questions, Rebecca, if you want to share a little bit about your background, kind of brief bio. I know we'll get into some questions around, the fundraise and all that, but tell us about yourself and, what brought you here. Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Thank you all so much for joining us, Rob and Abbas, who have been such a big part of my journey. Thank you guys so much, Rachel, Natalie. Thank you for having me all. I'm grateful. I will delve into the background because I think one thing that I've learned so much is that people wonder, can I do this if I don't have a background in it? And I think hearing an example of how you can have such a disparate history and then go into entrepreneurship is inspiring if people are sort of considering it. I went to undergrad at Wake Forest University. I studied communication and Chinese, went to Columbia University where I got my master's in Chinese history and language, and moved to UCLA to study Chinese language. And I fell into, very unintentionally, reality and documentary television producing. I loved that career. It was like an exciting, fun career to be in at that time. And I moved up quickly and I built that career in LA and then in New York for about 15 years. I then had children, and after my second was born, I stayed at home for 3 years, and I was prepared to go back to work, and I received a job offer from Bravo to work on a Housewives show. And it was like, yes, this is amazing. You don't get an opportunity like this because it's a young person's industry. I'm going to go back. And I could not find someone to drive my children to school. I was willing to pay well. And it was stunning because it was a short trip. And I had never considered entrepreneurship. I had no idea how to create a financial model, or I didn't know who to call for insurance. I mean, there was a baseline I felt that you had to be above to do this, and I was way below it. But way led on to way, and I ended up entering and winning a female entrepreneur contest, which really provided a lot of resources that helped me get off the ground. At the beginning, this is one thing that I've loved so much about She's Independent, because I think you guys provide that same kind of support that without which I probably would not be here. And that's my story. And in 2019, in January, Kidcaboo was an idea, and we grew it from there.
Thank you so much for, sharing a little bit about that. And I'll give just a real brief kind of update around this conversation series before we launch into some more questions. But She's Independent Investments is really excited around not just investing. Of course, we want to, impact money flows, but we're really excited about access and education. And I think to your point of, do you have the background and what do you need to be able to do the thing? We recognize that a lot of women, especially, are lacking that, whether it's the literacy or the confidence to step in to that maybe founder role, that investor role. And we're really excited to, have the conversations, and also to allow, through a very active engaging, kind of working style, skill development. And so this conversation series is something where we're going to interview, founders, we're going to interview investors, we're going to have conversations with just individuals where we can start, deepening some of these skills in the investing ecosystem, so that when we're looking at investments or we're thinking about maybe starting a company, we can do it a little bit more, let's say strategically, a little bit more confidently. And I know that your journey, Rebecca, is one that will inspire others. And so thank you for joining us today.
No, absolutely. And I do want to say, and Boss, who's a venture analyst at New Chip, and I actually recently spoke, and I was really telling him there is a great need for education, just giving women the confidence to know they can join this world. They can they can make it, they can get funding, they can invest themselves. I mean, for some reason, that mentality is lagging historically. And I think that's why this group has been so important. Great.
Well, thanks for sharing that. So maybe to dive in, you've done a lot, from both having the idea and saying, I need this thing and I'm going to build it, to, fundraising. When you look at the whole thing, what do you think the hardest part of that journey was, and how were you able to get through that?
There was a lot that was very difficult. I think every single hurdle involved in this, I mean, I was told couldn't be surmounted by industry insight. Just very, very difficult things, especially if you're starting with a dearth of understanding of how to build like a startup. But I would say just getting off the ground, making the calls, finding out what insurance is involved. I remember calling the DMV in New Jersey, maybe then the MVC, and they were like TMC, and I didn't even know what kind of license I needed. I was told that I needed to build a financial model before I could meet with somebody who would give me baseline knowledge. Well, I didn't sleep for 3 months one summer to learn how to do this. That's how long it took. But I had to do that just to get a meeting, to figure out like the next step. So that, 3 months not sleeping to get to one more step. That really, really was a difficult part. And at some point you're like, all right, well, I made it past this hurdle. They said I wouldn't. I made it past this hurdle. They said I couldn't. And at some point you just have that confidence in yourself, I think, to know that you can continue on and get there. And now anybody can throw anything my way. And I'm just like, okay, well, let's figure out how to deal with it. Right. It's confidence builder for sure.
And, one thing that we were really impressed with in terms of, interviewing or understanding, more about the investment and diving in with diligence was you had some of these partners, some of your other investors that were very skilled in the space. Tusk. They were, early investors in Uber. And when you talk about things like the regulation, it's really difficult. How did you get into that world? How did you find them? Did they find you? What happened there? How did you get that support?
To think how far I came, because on day one, of course, they would have been like the insurance people, like, sorry, no offense, but you're never going to get this. I think I had to really prove myself, my ability to lead, my ability to build and to exercise grit and continue on in the face of just, being knocked down again and again and again and again. And at that point, I think once you get to a certain point and you have hit certain goals and hurdles, the company sort of has to almost be built at that point. But at that point, it becomes a little bit easier. You still have to push through doors. You still have to find, I remember with Tusk, for example, so I knew Bradley Tusk had been heavily involved in pushing Uber across the country early, and his team was really known for bringing in partnering with new model companies that were going to need regulatory help in states like FanDuel, potentially dangerous or offensive, just new model things that are difficult for the public to accept. And so people kept saying, investors whom I would meet with, or mentors, or anyone that I would meet in Silicon Valley, New York, whatever, they would just be like, you have to find Tusk, you have to find a connection. I had to beat down doors to sort of get through to them. But it's funny, they had heard of us too. And they were like, we were trying to reach you too. That was one of the easier hurdles at that point. But it was a perfect match.
And I think it's such a great explanation that you'd already executed before you got to them, right? Because an idea alone, we're not going to invest there. She's independent.
No.
And it's really tough because will this person be able to do this impossible thing? Because a lot of times starting a business, right? It's this just insurmountable amount of obstacles. But the fact that you did enough to say, oh, she does show up. She executes.
Right.
She's beating down the doors to get to us. I mean, right there, you're showing up. And I know also that I believe they looked at another of the ride sharing kind of safer kids ride sharing businesses and didn't invest.
Yeah.
And so it says something that they invested in you.
Yeah. And I mean, I think they saw at that point, yes, it was about, they're looking at the leader, they're looking at the team, they're looking at who's just going to be able to push this to hell and never stop. And and I think they know that about me now, but like, and they've seen that. I think my team certainly knows that, but I can't tell you how many times early on I would go into early investor meetings right outside of New York. So I was being introduced through connections to VCs. And I mean, people were just like, this is an idea, I guess, but like, you can't do this. Like, you're not the one, you're not going to work hard. You're not taking enough risks. You're not. And I'm like, how do you even know what risks I'm taking? I mean, it was just like, no. And people are like, get to the no. And then you learn a lot. You like, sometimes you can ask like, well, why no? And maybe you'll like glean some knowledge from that. But I mean, like, it's hard. I mean, like, there are times when you will just like have to go home and cry because there's literally nothing else to do. And I mean, some are just cruel, ripping things apart. And you're like, oh, well, should I believe him that this idea is never going to take off and that I'm definitely the wrong person to do it?
Right.
Do I stop? Because he has more experience than I do. And this is really where you've got to believe in yourself a lot. You've got to be like, it does not matter. I can do this. Like, what makes him more competent than I am?
Let's dig into that. As a woman, and I know that it could be a woman or somebody from a diverse background, but where do you inherently find or get that confidence, that grit, when people are telling you? Because, by the way, it is documented that a lot of investors will, position questions differently, let's say, to women versus male founders. And so how do you find that confidence? Where did that come from?
Okay, so I'm the oldest of four, and I think I'm really resilient. Like, I really always find I am a rarity in that when some failure happens, I'm like, yes, let me learn from this. It could be in any realm in life. And I know that's kind of weird. People are like, really? But that's always how I've been. And that had to have something to do with this, because if not, I don't really know that I would be here. I have been asked a lot of questions, and I think women I don't want to stereotype, but like may tend to be a little bit more insecure in their answers, or maybe a little less confident. Like, I don't know that I deserve to be here. And so there would be times early on with investors where I would be like, they would ask me a question and I'm supposed to be the expert, right? Like, this isn't their field. And they're asking me this and I'm like, well, I think, but what do you think? They don't want to hear that. That's, and I think only with time, with experience, did I really like, around the time I was talking to you guys probably, and look, that was like 3.5 years in, I was just like, okay, yeah, I am the expert here. I know, and I'm not, I'm speaking from experience, from what I know, and there are some things I'll say I don't know, and we just have to learn together. But it's really intimidating. And I think, but I can tell you that if you can make it through it, you're never going to be the same again. It's difficult to go through it, I suppose. But like, I also love that my children, I mean, my daughter, my oldest is 10. I think she saw me get knocked down a lot. And she heard some guy yell at me on the phone the other day, like, and she was like, do you like him? he was a potential investor. He was like asking just really aggressive questions.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, it's totally fine. That didn't bother me. He was just wondering this and trying to get a good answer, you know, and I think that teaches you a lot about, what your worth can be, what your voice deserves to be.
Yeah.
But I had to learn that.
It definitely is interesting, right?
Mhm.
Personality wise, you're able to, let's say, handle some of the tougher conversations. I have
Right.
an engineering sales background, right?
Mhm.
I can handle the no, and I can learn through that, but it's scary for a lot of people. And for some people, it's going to be a lot harder because their personality type.
Mm.
One thing I'll say is, right, if an investor doesn't make you feel good, you probably don't want to be, really going down the path with them, because that's gonna be marriage and somebody you're going to work with for a while. But if you have thick skin and you see the good, even if they're tough, it could still work. But I think we don't want to scare people, right? I think there's all different types of investors. And
Right.
I hope, that out there's also the investors that say, I'm going to meet this founder where they are and support them. But unfortunately, that doesn't often happen,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
If
anything, I think it's a training ground, because like you have to, it wasn't only during the investment period. I mean, we're 4 years in, this company's growing, and we officially launched in August. So it's not like we're expanding across these states. Well, look, we're on pretty stable ground, but I'll still have advisors and investors, mostly men, and I don't want to type, and I adore all of them, but I'll say something and they'll be like, I don't think that's a good idea. Like, why don't we just like hunker down in Dallas, like do just this place instead of like, why are we popping up? And I'm like, it's not that it didn't occur to me that we shouldn't expand too fast, okay, because it did. Like, give me some credit here, dude. But my gut is showing me and telling me it's having that worth even beyond the initial investor conversations. Once you're not faking it anymore, it's and I don't know what it is, but some of these people will really like talk as if they just know, and they do know. They have a lot of experience. They're smart. They've done a lot and are successful. But you also have to have that confidence in yourself too. Maybe some people inherently do. I think I had some, but I had to also learn a lot of it and grow into that a lot.
Yeah. Great. Well, no, thank you for sharing. And listen, this is a space that we call it, when we meet, no questions are dumb. We like hearing real authentic things. So you can swear, you can say whatever you want, and sure, it's recorded, but we appreciate it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The watered down version, right? There's not nearly enough to be inspired from or learn from. So we appreciate you sharing.
Yeah.
So I guess let's talk about, being a woman who's, going out looking for capital. We touched on it, but were there ever moments when you said, oh, they're asking this, or they're positioning it this way or treating this way because I'm a woman? Just curious if, and maybe there's not a black and white one, but just have to ask.
So and again, I've like basically begged the boss to deal with the fact that women can't get it. I mean, I don't like using crutches. I don't want to sit here and be like, maybe they didn't invest in me because I just did a terrible job when they were talking to me, like possible, right? I do see a lot of men in my circle who have an easy time getting funding. I think I've gotten much better at getting funding and talking to investors. And so at some point, it's probably going to catch up to me like, hey, I'm just as good as he is. Like, why am I not getting this? I know a lot of women feel that they don't. I think I had a better chance than many because of like some, connections, friends from school. I don't like leaning on that either. But I do think there's a reason that many women, for example, go to equity crowdfunding instead of going to VCs.
Sure.
I ultimately think that if VCs really do hold that bias and they don't fix it, I think they're going by the wayside. I mean, it's a matter of decades, maybe, but that's not going to continue, like, honestly. And but you have a group here that's amazing. And like, even when I mentioned this thing, somebody else from a similar group was like, I want to start a similar group or something like this, because like, I want to help other women invest too. And I'm literally, wow, is there this huge dearth of female investors? You know, like, I can tell you, I only have 2 female presidents on our cap table. You're one, and my sister is the other. That was not what I intended. I think it's crazy. I think the men that really believed in this, saw my grit, etc. But like, there is some disconnect between why there isn't a ton of female funding going to females, period, or why male funding may not go as much to women as it does to these male-led companies.
Yeah. And listen, you know, I've been there in the workforce, and I've worked with the moms with multiple kids, and believe me when I say their skills, their resiliency, the way that they're able to crush work, I mean, it's next level. And so, you know, on one hand, you could probably see or hear, oh, well, you know, you're a single mom of 2, how are you going to do this thing? But I might think of the flip of that, right? You're a single mom of 2, and the fact that you're even there says something, right?
Oh my God.
I
know. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, I think that just goes to show you, I mean, I feel that you could put a woman in charge of a task and get a very different result than if you, and again, I don't want to gender stereotype here. I don't, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And you made a comment a little bit earlier that there were things you learned about yourself, or maybe, you know, new skills you grew into. Can we talk a little bit more about that? And was it things that maybe you were kind of aware of before you went through this journey? Was it completely new, you know, areas, and you said, wow, you know, this is something that I never realized that, you know, I wanted to grow into, that you had to because of the journey? Tell us a little bit about, you know, what you've learned about yourself.
Yeah, I think so in reality television producing, because it's not reality at all, you could be told by like Discovery, I want someone who's giving birth right now in the woods because she's homeless, and she has to be 9 months pregnant because she has to give birth within the next hour. And I want a bear to deliver the baby, and the bear's head though has to also be on fire. And at some point I was like the first one that was like, okay. And like, I started running all these shows. I moved up quickly. I just was like, anything is possible. And I think that's what really like propelled me, whatever, because I learned you could really make anything. Sometimes we'll be in situations and it will be like, well, what are we supposed to do about this? And boy, do I like pivot like nobody else. And this has really compounded that. But I think that former career gave me, I never thought I'd have to use that skill of trying to go find a bear in a forest again. But boy, do you have to do it with entrepreneurship. I mean, every single day is like, well, who's going to pivot fastest and get us the hell out of this situation? You know, that's what it's like.
And I'm curious, you know, one of the things that I look for, you know, when I'm making an investment is, does this founder either have the skills or know the gaps? And, you know, are they going to maybe hire, or, you know, if they can't grow into the thing, are they going to be able to let the reins go? Tell us a little bit about your mindset around that. Clearly you'll take these pivots, you know, the growth trajectory, thinking about, you know, building other, you know, strong people on your team as you navigate to the next place. And I'll say that, I don't know, it's almost like a flip of people that have a ton of confidence. I think it's harder sometimes to see them take the step back. Whereas I think you're interesting. It's, you've built and developed, you know, confidence in yourself, but it's not like you're somebody who I'd say needs to know the thing up front. You can learn, you can evolve.
Right. So one thing I think that is the most interesting and important thing that I've personally learned, and I don't know that this is talked about much, we're sort of like going from like, look, there were a million times this company could have and should have failed like early on, right? Okay, so then we get to stable ground. Whether anybody believes me or not, we were on really stable ground compared to where we'd been. And I knew that. And so, but now we were at this place, especially now as we're kind of like pushing forward. And I am realizing there's a value as we build our team into people that have done this before. our team that has not done this before, that came in with me, our founding team, all did very well at just sort of coming along with this. And sometimes I'm like, they hung in there, like, wow. Like, I mean, I knew I was doing this to myself, but these people hung in there. And that's great. But like, there is this fear in some people, like, oh, this can't work. This is going to fail. Like, you're on the verge of failing like every single day. But I can tell you that in certain people, the fact that you may fail, or that this is going to fail, or this is going to end, literally, it just never occurs to you, because it's not a possibility. You're just going to pivot your way out of it. Doesn't matter. You'll find a way. Like somebody said to me the other day, I think you just saved this company. And I was like, oh, that didn't occur to me. I mean, I knew it was tight here for a minute, but like, no, we were fine. Like, that was like the least of my hurdles. I do think that at some point there is a lot of benefit to not being maybe like risk averse in this. I don't know that you could be really safe and cautious and want everything to go very smoothly and do something like this. Maybe you could, but like, it would have to maybe be on a smaller scale, and definitely not transporting kids, because that's dangerous. And, you know, I mean,
Right.
like, you really have to have that in you. Somehow I did, but yeah. And you can't be easily dissuaded. Like, you can't, I'm not optimistic or overly positive. I hate when people call me that. I think I'm a realist. I can look at things and be like, yeah, that is really bad. You are absolutely right. Okay, we're going to figure it out right now, how to do this. We may have to call all our lawyers, but we're going to figure it out, you know? So
let's dig into that on the, I don't know, the fundraising and the way that you tell a story side. I think that a lot of founders, right, they're doing this impossible thing and they have to be overly optimistic, let's say. But I think that being a realist in ways and telling it as it is really important. We actually use a data-driven tool that kind of debiases some of that storytelling to bring it down to the data. But, you know, tell us when you're sharing that story of this is what we've done, this is where we're going, how much do you lean into the story versus what you've done? And what I will say is data-driven studies show a lot of these women or diverse founders are saying more of the, and we did this, whereas the overly confident founder who, you know, maybe has gotten all the support and knows what to say is going to tell a cheerier story to get a higher valuation, right?
yeah, and I think that happens. I mean, someone who was just, and I think is going to invest, and was telling me a story, and it was just like, and then they found out that this thing was totally like a lie. And I was like, and they raised money. I mean, like, but this dude just told this version. And it is a lot of constructing a narrative. I'm very real. I have no problem saying, I don't know the answer to that, and we'll figure it out, or that is something that we have to figure out. I think hearing a story is important. And I think the way you tell the story, like somebody was just, Tusk actually had University of Chicago interns analyzing Kidcaboo as a project for like in their MBA program. And they were like, well, we think that it'll give parents a lot more leisure time if they have somebody who will transport their kids. And I'm like, this is actually just like literally letting people get to work so they can get a paycheck and like save their career. And like, those are two really different stories, right? And Bob, whom you know from Tusk, was like, I still don't know that I'm buying the leisure thing. And I was like, also, you know, it's important how which parts you choose to highlight, I think, and how you connect the dots. People need to understand why the need is real and why the demand is real. But if the product is good and you have the demand and the numbers to back it up, which we've always had, I think that sells it ultimately. Yeah. You can tell the best story on earth, but if you don't have those metrics, like,
yeah,
it's kind of hard to believe.
Yeah, no, thanks. You mentioned earlier, you know, a bit about the crowdfunding route that a lot of women or female founders take.
Yes.
Which you did alongside, you know, kind of that traditional reaching out and connecting with investors. Tell us a little bit about the difference of those channels, difficulties, you know, strengths, things you liked, things you didn't like.
So one reason I wanted to do that, I think I did it for a different reason than a lot of other women do it. And I think it's because a lot of women were either told no, well, I don't have stats to know which one is true, but like told no too many times by VCs, couldn't get VC meetings, didn't feel they were taken seriously, or just assumed based on sort of common knowledge that they weren't going to have a chance with VCs. And so they go that route instead. I did it because our mission is really like to level the field for underdogs, sort of like for, you know, women in their careers. And as we started raising money, there were a lot of people who wanted to invest in this mission as well, and they weren't accredited investors. And so like my lawyers were like, and I was like, well, that is not okay. Like, I want these people to be able to, and at that point, I think crowdfunding had come far enough along that VCs had sort of just like accepted that it was like something they were going to have to be on board with. At first, they were like scared of crowdfunding because it was like, this is going to take us over. So let's just say if anyone crowdfunds, we're never giving you money. That had stopped at the point that I did this. So I just wanted to open it up to people who believed in the mission. And I won't say that it's been very different than my experience with you guys, okay? Because you guys were also very personally attached to what we were doing. You cared in a way that a lot of other investors maybe didn't care to know. It was like, we just think this is a really good investment. You can take you're clearly the one to do this. You're going to run with this, make me money in 5 years. And I'll be like, okay, and good. Thank you for leaving me alone and letting me do my job and not like asking me too many questions. But like the support and the emotion that comes from like people who really feel invested and interested in this. And like, I mean, something happened, like huge happened one day, and like Rachel and I were like FaceTime, this is a while ago. And like, I was like, can I call you right now? Because I like really wanted to tell her this thing, you know. You don't do that with a lot of investors, you know, you do it with the ones that are passionate about your mission. I found a lot of that in that equity crowdfunding, and I really, really appreciated it. You know,
how much ultimately did you raise via the crowdfunding route versus the traditional route?
So that was around 3. We had a cap, and I think we kind of either exceeded or like got close, but I think it was probably around like 379 or 400 something, but because they take 7.5%. I don't remember if it was over, and but whatever. I think, you know, we've raised 2 million total. We've done a lot with not much, but I mean, we'll raise our Series A soon.
Great.
Yeah.
And any, you know, thoughts or strategy you'd share with other founders that are, I don't know, in that journey of they've raised that early, or maybe a friends and family, you know, seed round, and they're thinking about the next one? I mean, we're in a tough market. Are you already kind of keeping the existing investors, you know, kind of warm? Are you circulating and thinking about, well, with this next raise, if we want to raise more, maybe it's new investors given, you know, the size of investment? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary as hell time for somebody who doesn't get scared a lot. I've lost sleep, and I don't lose sleep over anything. I mean, it is not, and my business is growing at a time when many businesses aren't growing, and yet I still am scared, right? Yeah. It's scary. It's scary what we've had to do to extend our runway. Like Emil Michael, who was of course, like, you know, Travis Kalanick's like right-hand person, said in a podcast interview maybe a month ago, he was like, I think the founders that are still growing and say, all right, so we won't grow at 80% because we have to preserve runway, we'll just cut it down to like 20% or whatever, but we're still going to grow. They're the ones that when the dry powder loosens up, because they grew, right? And we've had to do that to survive, like to make sure we could pay our insurance to survive. It's a really scary time. I think if you have an idea that's growing, you have to be a realist. If you're selling buttons and you're finding this isn't, you have to be okay to walk away. Like, you know, maybe you just really want to be an entrepreneur. Well, then maybe find something else. I was an entrepreneur because I had this need that I encountered and ended up solving the damn problem. But I do think that it's a scary time. But I also think that if you can show any growth, somebody once said, like, even if you can get 10 people who are not at all interrelated, then you can assume that there's a way to 100 or 1,000 and keep going there. That was really never part of our story because we were so buzzy and demand. But I always felt that that was something people could hold on to, you know, so especially in scary times like this.
Yeah.
So.
Exciting. Well, listen, I mean, I think it's so important to be responsive to and adapt, you know, with the markets and with funding and where you are in the journey. And the fact that, you know, you are making that change to say, well, maybe we, you know, are going to pull back growth so that we can, you know, be around for longer,
Yeah.
have a bigger runway. Really smart. And to your point, right, a lot of companies are not growing today. So to have something where you have real demand, and have these long, you know, queues of moms and working parents that, you know, really want to use the service, even in markets you haven't yet launched, is really exciting. And it's a testament to, you know, you needing to be in these markets.
Yeah.
We've had, you know, various She's Independent calls where we'll have somebody, maybe Rachel, for example, say, oh, you know, I'm going off video. I have to go pick up the kids. And it's okay. We need Kidcaboo in Jersey.
I know. Trust me, I know.
We're so ready for it.
We are so working on that.
All I
So
can say is my 17-year-old is going for a driver's test on Monday. So if we could all do a collective prayer around 3:30 in the afternoon.
There you go. I will.
So I guess we've talked a bit about your journey, but let's talk about single moms specifically. You know, do you have advice for other single moms who are in the stages of whether it's the idea stage, you know, they're thinking about fundraising, they're trying to build a team, specifically single moms, right? Because this is something where, wow, I think you're maybe one of the first, if not the first single mom founder that I've looked at and invested in, which is
And
really
that sucks, but that's
Yeah.
true. That's real. What you just said. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the only one, but
yeah, no, I'm
that's
saying
staggering.
like it's staggering. And so I guess asking, right? We have, and by the way, we're partnered with an organization that I know had some registrations for today, and some people may listen to the recording, but an organization where it's moms, and so not necessarily single moms, they may be single, but you know, women that have had kids that want to
Yeah.
get back to the workforce or, you know, step back into
mom up.
work.
Yeah. You
And
can
so,
right, exactly.
what can you say? And maybe it's moms, it's single moms, you know, it's just, you're in your whole own category, right? Having kids that aren't yet out of the household. I mean, it's such a big thing.
It is very difficult. I can't tell you how many people were like, you know, you just apply to Y Combinator and you know you're going to get in. And I'm like, I have kids. I can't go away for 3 months. This is pre-COVID. And they're like, because you know you're going to get in because you're the only mom that ever will have applied. And I'm like, okay, but probably right. I was living with my children's father at the time that Kidcaboo was like in ideation and but until COVID, I mean, he was basically working in the city every day. I was at home and my kids just had to go along with me for the ride. Now they were 3 and 6. I was just thinking about this upstairs because I had a feeling you would ask me something like this. And I had never thought about the reality of it. Had they been older and had their in-laws, or had they been younger and been babies, I wonder if Kidcaboo ever could have actually happened. The timing of the entire thing was just so fortuitous. But I do remember that summer I had to say, so I got a fake Christmas tree this year. Like I'm not religious, but I got a fake tree this year. My daughter was like, why are we getting that's ridiculous. We're getting a fake tree. And I was like, because I know my limitations and some things have to give right now. Like I can't remember this big inferno from yesterday because there's a bigger inferno today. Right. So I had to be like, all right, for one summer, my 3-year-old and 6-year-old can eat cookies for breakfast every single day. And I'm just going to be like, you know what? That's fine. And if somebody sees them doing it and it's like, you're a bad mom, I'm just going to be like, sorry. I mean, you really, really, really have to decide. And Kevin Morris at Tusk said, because at some point I was like, I just feel awful, like, and it's much easier than it was before. But he's like, look, you're doing this for them and not just in the long run, like in the short, and look what they're learning. And there is a lot to be said for that, right? So there's a flip.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you own your own journey, right? Or your story. I recently spoke at a women's funding summit, and this one founder said, oh yeah, you have to go on the roadshow. And I said, no, you don't. You don't have to go on the roadshow. And it could be a virtual roadshow, and it could be these other avenues. But as a woman or as a mom or somebody with a health issue or whatever it is, you don't have to do the traditional thing that the men have done, right? And I think that that's so important to remember, right? You don't have to do it that way because they did it that way.
No, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think you have to be okay being like, I'll go into meetings and I'll be like, I'm off camera because I didn't get to take a shower because my dog pooped on the floor and like my child was screaming and threw it at my daughter, and like that's not normal. But that's my reality. And you take what if you like me, then you're going to have to take this journey. If anything, I think it makes you stronger and more I don't know. I would think it makes you a better founder because you can figure out any situation, but like, you really have to draw your boundaries. And there are some times when people will call me and it will be a very serious situation. This just happened today, and women aren't natured to do what I'm about to say. Because there could be an emergency going on in operations, but if I'm not focusing on funding and growth for this company fully, this company is going to fail regardless. They can deal with an emergency in operations. Okay. Now, if it's a very serious one, yes, I need to be involved. But like, even something close to very serious can happen. And I have to be like, look, I trust you to be able to handle this. And I need to say, no, I'm not going to take this call. And sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's scary, but I've learned you really, really have to delineate, or else you can't do it. You can't do it all. I am absolutely opposed to multitasking. You will hear nobody else. Multitasking, good luck. Like, you're not going to get there. You have to fully focus when you can focus. And then at 2 o'clock, you have to stop focusing to go and pick up your kids, and fine. But like, you've got to just do it fully when you're doing it, or else you'll never get there, And I think we have it in us to do that.
I'm reading 4,000 Weeks finally, which is fascinating. And by the way, one of the other female founders we invested in sent me the book because I will
totally read that.
An app for basically it's social media for authors and books called Copper. But just that idea that, what is time management? Everybody has some newfangled solution, something, but even to your point, right? Now your kids have a ride. It doesn't mean that you have, free time to go on vacation. Right. The fact is, right, what is it? World War II, was it, or World War I, where it was, okay, well, we got these appliances for the households, but then it was like you were doing work in other capacities. Like, it doesn't actually free you up. It's like, it's just kind of applying yourself elsewhere. But you have to at some point say no, and you can't multitask everything and you can't get everything done. What's the most important thing? Right.
Yeah. And I say every day, like, I don't remember and I think I shocked the hell out of this person. I was like, well, you'll learn this about me. I basically triage infernos for a living. And I do. I literally deal with the biggest fire. There could be another huge fire and people are like, how is she ignoring this? Like, how is she ignoring? We've never had a safety incident, but say there was like a kidnap. How is she doing that? Ignoring this because this thing is even bigger, but it is. And so I have to deal with it. And I mean, that is how